In this training, we're going to take a look at some of the more advanced functions and operators available inside of SmartSuite's formulas. So if that's of interest, stick around and let's get into it. Let's go ahead and hop right on into my screen. I am sharing with you the resource that SmartSuite has put together. This resource is kept up to date as any new functions or operators are added inside of SmartSuite. They will also be added to this cheat sheet. So make sure that you bookmark this space so that you can refer back to it in the future should you ever have any questions about your formulas. But let's go ahead and pop on in here, and I want to point out some of the more advanced operators and different things that you can do inside of your formulas in SmartSuite. So in the previous intro part, we talked about the simple operators: addition, division, subtraction, basic math stuff. But it gets a little more complicated when you start using some more advanced features like equivalency. So the double equal sign here simply means that two things are equivalent or equal. So here we say it will return a true value if those two things that you're comparing are equal. So you can compare two fields, or you can even compare two formulas. Maybe you have formula 1 that performs a calculation, and you want to compare the output of that calculation to another formula, formula 2. Well, you can do that as well. So just note that these operators can apply to fields and to formulas in tandem. Now, we also briefly talked about greater than or less than symbols inside. So these are similar to the equivalence operator, except that they don't look for equivalence. They look for greater than or less than, depending on which way you decide to write it. And they will return true if that operator is true, or they'll return false wherever it is false. Now, the slightly more advanced version here is that you can do greater than or equal to and less than or equal to. Now, the thing to note is that the greater than or equal to starts with the greater than sign and then has the equal to, and same thing with the less than or equal to. It starts with the symbol, we're going less than in this particular case, and then the equal sign follows that. Now, one other thing that you might look for in terms of equivalency or non-equivalency is to check if things are not equal. And so just like an equal sign or a double equal sign is going to look for equivalence, well, the exclamation mark equal sign is going to look for non-equivalence. So if two things that you're comparing, if you put that exclamation mark immediately followed by an equal sign in between two different elements, well, it's going to then check to see if they are not equal to each other. If that is true, that they are not equal to each other, don't get confused in the double negatives here. If that is true, then it will return a true value. But if those two things are in fact equal to each other, then it will be false. They are not equal to each other. And so we're looking for a negative output or a false output on the case where they are equal to each other. So a lot to wrap your head around, but just go step by step as you're building these things out, and surely it will start to make sense over time as you use it more and more. Now let's go ahead and scroll on down and look at some of the slightly more advanced functions as well. Now it's important to remember that all functions can be used in conjunction with other functions, and this is where these formulas really get powerful, but can also get a little bit complicated. So in all of these cases, I would just suggest reading through and checking out what these different functions do. Of course, you can also search this particular space if you had a certain thing you were looking for. So, for example, you might want to know, how do I return a count distinct? This will return the count of distinct or unique items in a referenced field. So if you ever need to look up and see what a particular formula does, you can do that here. Or if you don't know what the formula is called, but you kind of know what you're looking for, maybe you can search some key terms inside of that find bar here and find the function that you're missing. In terms of the slightly more complex formulas and functions, I personally tend to feel that the date functions are a little bit harder to navigate when you're new with the software. So I would suggest exploring things like the date add. Date add will allow you to take a date, add a certain number to it, and then determine what that number represents, maybe minutes or hours or days even. So you can add anything that you can imagine to an existing date inside of your pre-existing solution. In addition to that, you can do a date diff, and this is going to return the difference between two dates. And so again, a lot of the date functions tend to be a little bit on the more complex side, but the only way to really break through to that other level is just simply practice. You'll notice that you have a large number of different functions here, and we obviously won't be going through all of them here for this video, so I would just suggest taking a deeper look at all of these and seeing what they do, and also don't fail to look at the valid inputs here. This is going to allow you to know what type of field you can reference inside of the function that you're using to make sure that you have the proper syntax for what you're trying to get done. Lots of options here, and it's impossible to have all of these memorized, so definitely, as I mentioned already, do bookmark this so that you can refer back to it as needed. And we definitely went fast, so feel free to go back and rewatch, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. If you have any questions about what we covered in this training, please ask them below in the comments section of this video. And until then, we'll see you in the next training.